Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a very, very good morning. Thank you for joining us for our Teach and Learn Masterclass version 2.0. Of course, the theme for today's masterclass is Petroleum Fiscal Systems Analysis for Strategic Investment Decisions. Please confirm you can hear me. Confirm you can hear me, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
Loud and I like that. Amazing. So before we start the event, can you help me go to the comment section and tell us where you are joining us from? Just interact on the comment section. Let me know where our amazing guests where they are joining us from. And while you are typing on the comment section, I'll continue the event by introducing our speaker and of course distinguished guests that have joined us here today. On the screen is the agenda for today. After the arrival of participants, we have a safety brief, and after that, we introduce and recognize guests, and then we have a welcome remark by section chair, and then we know about our amazing facilitator for today, and after that, you have the opportunity to listen to him for his about 2 hours lecture, and then we switch gears to your question and answers. We have a closing remark by our programs chair, and we are done for today. Of course, our safety brief is very short and simple. Please, if you're not speaking for today, we appeal that you mute your mic throughout the course of the event so that you do not interfere with the deliberations. Should you want to speak, because I know our speaker likes an interactive session, you raise your hands, and when he sees your hands raised, he will give the opportunity to ask your question or give a comment on whatever he's speaking on. Of course, you can use the chat button, the C for comments and the Q for questions. And of course, our facilitator will give the opportunity to always engage him during the session. Please always stay safe. Be alert and aware of your environment and ensure you can still hear the fire alarm with your headset. Let me go and see what's happening in the comment section. We have the latest father-in-law, Oga Mohammed Othman, on the call from PH. Of course, thank you, sir, for joining us. We have Ebel Onu joining us all the way from Abuja. We have Abednego Wakili joining us from the beautiful Benin City. Abednego has Benin City today. Of course, we have our programs chair, Professor Kafayat Adeyemi, joining from Abuja. We celebrate you, man, for putting out this masterclass. Of course, Ayodele Daniel, you're still not getting any sound. That is really bad. Ayodele, I think I have to chat with you. I'll type my response to you since you're not hearing anything, because you're not going to hear the response I'm going to give it to you now. So I think you have to log out and log in again. Log out and log in again. Ayodele. Thank you. Okay, okay, Olayinka Agbola, thank you so much, sir, Dr. Olayinka from PTDF. Thank you so much for joining this call. Ijeoma Oshilike from Port Harcourt, and of course, every other person that has not typed but is on the call. We switch gears immediately to recognizing some amazing people that have joined us on today's call. Speaking of introduction, let's start by saying a warm welcome to our speaker for today. Our speaker for today is a MIT certified energy professional. Please help me celebrate Engineer Dr. Ogenerume Ogulu. A warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you for joining us and accepting to speak to us today. Welcome, sir. Confirm you can hear me, sir. Engineer Rume, are you hearing me? Wow. We are not hearing you, sir, if you're speaking.
Yes, I'm hearing you. My mic was muted. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And welcome to you, sir. On the call, we are also pleased to have the council chairman of SP in Nigeria, the first woman to lead this position. She just finished leading a hectic 2 days AGIS summit, and today she's on the call to still learn, because as leaders, we learn and unlearn. Welcome, Engineer Amina Denmadami, PhD. One welcome to you, ma'am. Confirm you can hear me. Okay. We also have on the call Professor Kafayat Adeyemi, the programs chair of SP Abuja section, of course, the one spearheading and leading amazing technical sessions in SP Abuja. Welcome, Professor Kafayat. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. We're also pleased to have the GM, Strategy and Research from PTDF, Dr. Olayinka Agbola. Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we switch gears immediately. Welcome all other phenomenal guests on the call, Oga Mohammed Otman and every other distinguished personality, Ebolonu, a board member. Thank you for joining us. We switch gears immediately to listening to our chairman's remark. Unfortunately, our chairman is quite engaged and has given a representative to speak on his behalf. Please help me welcome Professor Kafayat Adeyemi, representing the chairman, for the welcome address. Ma'am, the stage is yours.
Okay, good morning once again, and welcome to this second edition of our Teach and Learn Masterclass series. The Teach and Learn Masterclass series is basically meant to enrich us knowledge-wise in the area of oil and gas. And so this morning we have one of us, Dr. Ogenerume, that will be diving deeply into a topic on petroleum fiscal system analysis for strategic investment decision. He is an authority here. He's done a lot of work in that space, and he's also into the business of sharing knowledge. And so let's sit, listen to the discussion, engage him, add more to what we already know. So it's going to be a knowledge or a value-added meeting this morning. So I urge us all to sit tight, listen, engage him, ask questions, and make comments as well. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much, Program Chair, for stepping in to speak on behalf of the Section Chair of SP Abuja, Section Engineer Ikechukwu Okafor. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to listen to our speaker for today. Of course, if you can see my slide, our speaker slide is okay. Of course, introducing Engineer Ogenerume Ogolo. He is a faculty at the Petroleum Training Institute, PTI, a certified energy professional from MIT. He's the current membership chairman of Society of Petroleum Engineers Abuja section, and of course, the student programs chair of SPE Nigeria Council. On the screen are his key achievements, of course, involved in the operationalization of the Petroleum Industry Act 2024. He's also a 2024 SP Abuja Section Distinguished Service Award recipient. He's a 2023 TWA Energy Influencers recipient. The 2024 SP Nigerian Council Chairman's Medallion Award recipient. The 2021 SP Abuja Section Young Members of Standing Service Award recipient. He's been involved in field development program for field in the UK and Nigeria. He's developed 2 new profitable indicators, developed the hybrid petroleum fiscal system, developed the lead royalty framework, and of course, developed an economic framework for the partial to total replacement of Nigerian bentonite clay. Of course, he has written 33 papers indexed in Scopus and Scholar and Google Scholar. Ladies and gentlemen, for the next 2 hours, you'll be listening to Engineer Dr. Ogenerume Ogolo. Sir, the stage is yours for your masterclass.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks also to my section for the opportunity to speak on this subject matter. And I also saw some senior colleagues that have joined. Thanks for joining the event as well. Council chair, section directors, managers. I'm so happy to see you that you've joined the call. And so I'll be speaking on something that is quite familiar to most of us, but I'll be looking at more at the fiscal analysis of petroleum fiscal system. I'll be looking at the fiscal arrangements of it. So I'm trying to share my slide. So if you see it, just let me know you've seen the slide. Please confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, please. But you can help us make it on slideshow mode.
Okay. So
Yes, I can.
put it on slides. Show at the moment. It's coming out. You can see it now, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, okay. Sorry for the delay. So, like I said, I'll be speaking on
Yeah.
petroleum fiscal system analysis for strategic investment decision. And of recent, the government made the president made an executive order, gave an executive order on how we can reduce the cost of doing business in the oil and gas sector in Nigeria. And once companies can do that, what happens? They will get a maximum of 20% tax incentive for doing that on a yearly basis. So that executive order has been passed. And I believe companies will be, they are currently looking at that. But though as an expert or analyst, I will also share my thoughts regarding that. And it's something that my team at the moment, we are looking at to see what we can do and provide the best advice to the government, in the sense that, because we see that if you are asking these companies to, to take up those cost reduction strategies, yes, the government is giving them tax incentive, but in one way or the other, when you reduce costs, that cost you've reduced, part of it will be translated into payment of tax, right? Part of it will be translated into payment of tax. We want to look at what level, whether should the government just say that once you are able to embark on that, the money that would have gone to be paid as tax can also be added to the cost efficiency incentives. So these are some of our thoughts that we have in our mind. So this is just a brief of myself as trades. Then in 2023, right, I won the Way Award Energy Influencer. I was among those that were awarded. It's a global award. Then this is the outline for the presentation. We'll look at the introduction section, project profitability, what is a petroleum fiscal system, what are fiscal terms, common types of petroleum fiscal systems. We'll look at the have in Nigeria, which is the Petroleum Industry Act. Then we take case studies and examples to see how we analyze a petroleum fiscal system, and through such, what companies usually do to take good investment decision. So a petroleum fiscal system does not just only define how governments will get revenue, but it also states how profits are to be generated, how profits are to be shared and perceived by investors. So it states, it's in it, you have what we call fiscal terms, or let me say fiscal tools that are used to build economic models. So in a fiscal system would define what kind of economic rent the government wants to use, right, to get revenue for itself. And with that, the company can use that to calculate their profitability. Globally, today, fiscal system define attracting petroleum investments. It's no longer depending on the fact that, okay, if I want to drilling activity is much more easier in the terrain. It goes beyond that today. Rather, what nations are looking at, or companies are looking at, is how attractive is the petroleum fiscal system of a country? Is it progressive or is it regressive? Or are there incentives that are there for investors? That's one thing I will give to this present administration, is the fact that for about 2 or 3 times, they've brought out executive order to drive petroleum investment in Nigeria. And if you also look at this particular regime, you will find out that we've been having more flows of foreign direct investment, and even indigenous players, right, investing more in the oil and gas industry because of these incentives that the government is putting in place. Aside that, the fiscal framework that we have in Nigeria is also progressive. And what we mean by a progressive fiscal system is that the laws or the fiscal systems are sensitive to several conditions. For example, when oil price changes, it's sensitive to it. It allows companies to be able to survive, right? When you have lower oil price, the government is going to take less. Once oil price goes up, the government takes more. And it's also sensitive to the production capacity of the companies, which I would also share light on in a subsequent slide. But generally, today, attracting petroleum investments is now a function of how attractive your fiscal system and how even stable your fiscal regime is. Today, you can come in and say, these are the laws. Tomorrow, you make a change. This sends a wrong signal, right, to investors, just like what is happening in the coastal road that they're trying to do. You find out that somehow it's sending a wrong signal, right, to investors. So companies look at the stability of your fiscal regime. So the oil and gas industry is the industry that provides the world, right? The world provides energy to the world in terms of fossil fuel, and today we're also diversifying into other forms of energy. Then these are the biggest oil and gas companies in the world. You could see their worth in terms of their market capitalization. And you could see the largest Saudi Aramco in Nigeria. You have, for Nigeria, is the biggest oil and gas private oil companies, right? You have Seplat there, and you could see the worth in that's about 9.8 trillion naira from Nairametrics. So why I put this here is that you could see that these companies on an annual basis, they always have a strategy. And what is that strategy? They want to be in business. And for them to be in business, they want to invest. They have to keep investing because there's what we call reserve replacement ratio, right? So that when you are producing from an asset, you should be able to also make more discovery or invention. That will enable you to be in business for a very, very long time because the oil and gas resources is depletable, right? So because of that, you have to find ways to replace what you are producing. So these companies over the years, right, they always look at, okay, how can I invest more so that I can be in business? So for them to invest more in any terrain or any country, what do? They carefully study the petroleum fiscal system of that country. The laws, they look at the laws, they look at the fiscals, they look at how stable it is, they look at the policies, right, surrounding investment in that locality, right? So what nations do is that they try to have a petroleum fiscal system that will attract investors. There was a research we did in 2020, in 2020, where we compared the fiscals, 2021, we compared the fiscals in the PIA and the Petroleum Industry Bill, the fiscals that was proposed in the year 2009. So when we compared it, we discovered that if the government had passed that bill in 2010, right, we would have made a lot of money. And the bill as at then would have been more appealing, though it's going to give government more money. So government lost a couple of billions of dollars for failure to pass the bill for about 10 years. But as at 2021, when the PIA was passed, government had no choice than to reduce the fiscals because of COVID and the energy transition stuff that was going on as at then. So that made the PIA to be more appealing and attractive. So like I said, why I put this here is that companies want to invest, but the question is that where are they going to invest? And what guides them for investment is the laws of the country. So these are the activities in the oil and gas value chain. And these are the areas companies invest in. So the petroleum industry, the petroleum fiscal system, it covers all the aspects of the industry. So it guides investors on how to do business in the upstream sector, the midstream sector, and in the downstream sector. Like the fiscals for the upstream, if you look at it, you find out that it's more of a royalty and tax system, right? While the fiscals for the midstream and downstream sector is more of a tax, just a tax system. At the end of the day, you just pay other levies, right? Which are also called what we call crypto taxes, as it is. Though at the moment, there's also a project we are working on at the moment to see how we can have a software in Nigeria that if you want to invest in the upstreams, the midstream and downstream sector, that software will be able to, to give you the profitability. So it's been a project we've been doing for quite some time. So I hope someday or very soon we are going to launch the software because it's going to be remarkable, a breakthrough in the Nigerian oil and gas sector. For the first time, we're having an integrated petroleum economic software. But like I said, these are the areas or aspects companies invest in, and these aspects are covered in the Petroleum Industry Act or in the Petroleum Fiscal System to guide investors. So this is a typical life cycle of an oil and gas field. And you could see that in this particular slide, you have different stages, right? From exploration to appraisal, to production, to development, and to abandonment. And if you look at this slide very well, this is the cumulative plot versus time, right? And at every stage of the field development program or field development, you understand there are what we call we have either inflows of cash or outflow of cash. And if you look at this figure very well, you find out that this guy is going down, right? The curve is going down, which means at this stage you are investing, company is investing, you've installed facilities, that's why it's going down, you are still investing. And when it starts going up, it means the company has started production, right? They have started production and, get it done like that. And like I always said that outside the upstream sector where you have the life cycle of the field development plan, you also have the life cycle, right, in the midstream sector. You also have the life cycle even in the refinery operations. And this is a typical plot that happens. At the initial stage, you start investing, right? After some time, when you start production, it begins to pick up until it gets to abandonment or a point where you want to stop or you sell up your assets or you no longer want to continue with the business, right? So this is just a typical life cycle of an operation. But the idea here is to let us know that for business analysis, this is what companies do, right? They try to look at, okay, I'm spending, yes, what's my cost profile at the end of it, or my cost and revenue profile? When will I start to make money, right? And how will it look like? When will I likely stop in that sense? But if my curve begins to steep or comes to a straight line, right? It means that I'm no longer making much revenue. So what next? Economic modeling, assessing the profitability of oil and gas investment. After you find an opportunity, let me say there's an opportunity for investment. The next thing to do is to be able to assess the profitability. Like I said, you want to invest in the upstream sector or the downstream sector or the midstream sector, whichever. How do you assess the profitability? This is just a slide that gives us an idea of what goes in. So some of the things that goes into your economic model or what the petroleum economics does is that, first of all, we have the oil and gas production that goes into the model. That's because for us to make money, right, we have to produce oil and gas and sell, right? So when we have that, we incorporate it into our model and we match it with the oil price. That gives us the total revenue in that that's total revenue for that investment. Then we now look at, okay, what are the laws of the land, right? What are the laws of the land? Or how much is the royalty? What about the tax rate, right? What about the profit oil, right? We put it in our model. Then thereafter, we look at, okay, how does the government want us to, to account for our cost? How much of it is going to be expense, or how much of it can we recover? We incorporate that into our model. And at the end of the day, we have what we call the profitability indicators that now guides investment decisions. For example, now, if I have um, 3 investments, okay, let me just throw it to us and see our response. I have 3 investments to carry out as a company, and investment A will give me let's say a net cash flow, or let me say an NPV of $30 million. Investment B will give me an NPV of $10 million, and investment C will give me an NPV of minus $5 million. So the question will be that, which of these investments will I choose for based on the NPV or for profitability analysis? Should I go with investment A, $30 million, investment B, $10 million, investment C, minus $5 million? Which of them do you think I'm going to choose?
Investment A.
Investment A, right? Why do you choose investment A?
Because of the NPV of $30 million. If all the 3 investments, if they have the same capital.
Yeah, that's true. Because of it has the highest NPV, right? So that means I'll go for investment A in that sense. And for me to get that investment, the profitability of investment A, like I said, I have to build my economic model. So my economic model, in it, like I said, I incorporate my fiscal system, my fiscal tools, right, into it to be able to account for that NPV, right? So one of the laws is that projects with higher NPV, right, they should be selected. Though, as a rule of thumb, we usually say that we also consider other economic indicators before we can take a good investment decision, because project A may give me an NPV of $30 million, whereas the payout period can be like, let me say, 25 years. And project B will give me an NPV of $10 million, and the payout period will be like 8 years, right? So companies also have their tradition or their yardstick that, oh, I prefer to go with the one that has a lower payout period so that I can get my money out as soon as possible, right? So it also depends on the risk tolerance of the company. But like I said, the whole idea here is that we use economic model, right, to assess the attractiveness, right, the profitability, right, of a petroleum fiscal system. That's why I've recently the executive order that President Tinubu made, right? What do? I already have my fiscal system, my economic model. So bring the executive order now. Look at what he has said. I incorporate it into my model. Then we can now look at the effects on oil and gas, on the effect of the profitability of an investment. So in building an economic model, the basic or the foundation behind economic models are your cash flow, right? Your cash flow, it allows you to account for the money spent and money that goes into the investment. That involves your OPEX, your CAPEX, you incorporate it into your cash flow model and your revenues. So that's why if you look at this equation that is here, the net cash flow, it allows you to calculate the profits. I usually call it simply the profit of the investment. If I have my total revenue, I remove my royalty, I remove my CAPEX, my OPEX, my bonus, my profit oil, and my tax as well. I'll be able to come up with the net cash flow. So what I'm saying in this, what we are saying is that for petroleum fiscal system analysis for strategic investment decision, what company does first is to calculate they look at the profitability. And one of the tools is the net cash flow, right? That allows us to now incorporate how government wants us to, what's the royalty rate, we remove it. What is the tax, we remove it. What is the profit oil or gas, we remove it. Although this is more for a what's it called, a PSC arrangement. So the cash flow model allows us to be able to assess the profitability of oil and gas investment because it allows us to account for the revenues and the costs that is into an oil and gas investment. So with that, from our cash flow, we can assess the project's profitability. And so it gives us a quick way to look at the economic viability of a proposed investment. Like I said, the economic viability is a function of the petroleum fiscal system. That's the fiscal arrangement, right? That is there. And there are many criteria that are used, and I will say that there's no perfect measure for it. And these are some of the criteria that I use. So when I build my cash flow model, I come up with first with the net cash flow. The net cash flow is the profit. And we all know about profit that if my money, if the value is positive, it means I'm making profit, right? If it is negative, it means that project is not viable because in the industry, companies are limited by funds, right? The companies are ambitious in the sense that they would like to really do a lot, but the challenge there is they're limited by funds, right? So in that case, we need to compare our net cash flows for projects before taking a strategic investment. You also have the payout period, you have the return on investment, you have the unit technical cost. The payout period is the time it takes for companies to get back their initial capital, right? Their cost of investment. How long will it take? What about the return on investment? Is it high or is it low? And companies usually have their standards. Some use a return rate, return on investment of I'm sorry, talking about the internal rate of return. You also have the return on investment is a tool. This one does not captures the time value of money. Then this measures here captures the time value of money. Then the unit technical cost. If you could remember in COVID, there's this drive to always reduce cost of production because that of Nigeria is quite high, right? The unit technical cost is simply the technical cost divided by the reserve. So it gives us an idea of how much we are going to spend to produce a barrel of oil. So these are just indicators without the time value of money. Though in 2023, we were able to develop what we call the modified unit technical cost model that we feel that it's more accurate. Not that we feel, it's more accurate than the UTC because the UTC doesn't account for money you give to government, right? And our proposition was that you cannot calculate profits with the money you are giving to government, right? So you have to account for that money that you're giving to government as a form of expenditures before you can actually get the unit cost for your production. The reason being that, because sometimes they will say, okay, oil price is $40 per barrel, and companies will be crying that I'm no longer making profit, whereas their UTC is $35 per barrel. But when you use the modified UTC, you find out that the costs are going to be like $44 per barrel. That means that they are not actually making profit. But with the UTC, they can't actually say determine the real price of oil that will make them to operate at a break-even condition. So we're able to do that and we got that. So these are measures without the time value of money. Then these are measures that helps us to incorporate the time value of money into our equation. You have the internal rate of return, the net present value, the discounted return on investment, and so on and so forth. They also have some equations that we use to be able to calculate this for investment. So what is now a petroleum fiscal system? We're talking about that. These are a set of laws, right? Regulations, agreements that governs the economic benefits derived from petroleum exploration and production. So they are it's what defines the relationship between the mineral owners and the oil and gas companies. Like I do say most times, is that the petroleum fiscal system, it is the constitution, right, that guides oil and gas investment, or that governs oil and gas activities, such that everybody, if you have anything to do, we offer back to the petroleum fiscal system, and we look at it. That's why, if you remember the saga between Dangote and NNPC, when he's saying that you guys give me crude oil, right? And it's pointing to you that we have a law, right? That means that we need to provide domestic crude oil obligations for local refining. And it rests on the PIA that this is the law, right? So it defines the relationship between the mineral owners and the oil and gas companies. It guides the activities of the oil and gas sector. And in it, you have the legislative aspect, the taxation, the contractual, and fiscal elements in it. So there's a typical example which I will also share in subsequent slides. But in every petroleum fiscal system, the government have an objective in mind. And some of the objective is that the government uses it as a way as a primary source of national revenue. That's why if you look at the US, President Trump, he's a businessman, he's a billionaire, right? You find out that when he came in, the next statement is that let's drill, because it's a revenue for countries, right? Then it's also a tool for economic development and social programs and infrastructural development. I can see a picture here, right? I'm assuming this is Abuja, right? Sure of us. Yeah, it's a tool for economic development. If you look at the world, there's a picture of Dubai. And as we all know that Dubai, most of their development stems from how they were able to utilize their hydrocarbon resources, right, to be able to develop their country. So it's a tool for economic development, social programs, and infrastructure. And it's puts in laws that will enable us to satisfy domestic demand, in terms of your gas, your oil, your refinery products, and the likes. And it fosters both direct and indirect employment. And you have local content development. You see that in Nigeria, one of the drivers of the local content is the oil and gas sector, right? That allows you to see that your local content companies are local content. They comply with their rules and directives. And I think there was a company of recent whose staff they were not abiding by the local content policy, and Pegasus had to take them to court right here and there. So it's also based on the laws, and because for you to even do any FDP plan or invest, you have to seek approval from the NCDMB, right? And these are all specified in the laws of the country. They're all in the PIA. Then they also have the technology transfer. So the government also put things in place that say that, oh, there could also be technology transfer. And I always want to emphasize on this, that when we talk about technology transfer, it does not always mean that in terms of facilities. It could also be in terms of human knowledge, right? Experience in that sense. And if you look at Nigeria, in terms of human capacity development, we found that our laws have really helped us. That's why you've seen that today the indigenous companies are becoming big players in the oil and gas sector. So there is huge when it comes to technology transfer. And if we, in some also fiscal systems, but not in Nigeria, there are laws that if you want to drill or do anything, all the facilities must come from the country. And, the companies have no choice than to see that that is done, right? Then, so these are the objectives that the government have in mind and others. For the investors at Petroleum Fiscal System Analysis, they study it and they analyze it because they want to look at it. Their aim is to make money, want to make more money. They want to make more profit. That's why before the passage of the deep offshore and inland basin production sharing contract amendment, they will find out that companies were going deep offshore. And one of the drivers of that is that outside of community issues was that when you drill at a depth greater than 1,000 meters, you don't pay royalty to the government, right? And that is huge for them too. Until 2019, when President Buhari had to make adjustments to bring in the deep offshore and inland basin production sharing contract amendment, and that was passed, and it makes them now start paying royalty even at the early stage of investment. So the companies look at all this, and they observe the changes in taxation regime. They look at their project profitability. They look at the risk. Look at even your fiscal stability risk, how stable are the fiscal systems, how stable are the laws, and what is the government response. And that's some of the things that in our country, Nigeria, that the PIA offers, right? That it tries to see how to also protect the interests of investors to some extent and give powers to some of the agencies so as to be able to reduce government interference in the oil and gas sector. So for companies, they want to look at how much can I get from this country, and what guides that is the petroleum fiscal system. So in the petroleum fiscal system design and analysis, what do we look at for? We want to look at, okay, what is it going to be? What is the contractor going to be taking? And what is the government share of the whole pie? We evaluate this and also look at what are the policies or what are the framework in place? What do we need to account for? Right? Who are the regulators? How do we need to do business in the country? What are the laws guiding our investments? How are licenses obtained? Right? Like, in those days before the PIA, we used to have OML. Right now we have Petroleum PPL. Right? So PML, Petroleum Mining License, and a Petroleum Exploration License, and so forth, so that it can account for both oil and gas, right? So we look at it, we look at the policy, we look at the governance aspects, we look at the administrative aspects, how is it, so that at the end of the day, you do not, you are not penalized, so that you didn't follow the laws as stipulated. So companies look at for all those stuff, but majorly, the company wants to know how much are we get, right? Is it profitable for us to invest in Nigeria? That's why if you look at last year or last 2 years, where I think Total went to invest in Angola, and that sends a huge signal to Nigeria, and the government had to to bring the team to they had to talk and have several conversations. The government too had to also bring in incentives to drive investors, right? So that to boost oil and gas investment in the country. So in design of fiscal system, these are things that I look at. And government also bring in incentives to woo investors, right? So what are the classification of petroleum fiscal system? So basically we have two types. You have the concessionary petroleum fiscal system, and you have the contractual petroleum fiscal system. The concessionary, it allows private ownership of petroleum resources. So when the company secures licenses, the asset belongs to them. But for contractual petroleum fiscal system, once you get a license, it's still the government that owns the resources. though both of them also differs aside from ownership in terms of taxation mechanisms and other fiscal arrangements. I will talk as in subsequent slides. So in 2021, we developed the hybrid petroleum fiscal system, which was presented at ATC back then in it was held in Dubai. So this one, we combined the concessionary petroleum fiscal system and the contractual petroleum fiscal system to enable governments and revenue early in a concessionary petroleum fiscal system. So what we did was to have we incorporate a cost recovery option for the concessionary petroleum fiscal system, so that that will give government the opportunity to start getting tax early for oil and gas investment. So I put this here to see what kind of fiscal arrangements that we have globally. You have the concessionary petroleum fiscal system, and these are some of the countries that are practicing it. Nigeria is also part of it, right? Where the owners becomes the concessionaire, right? Becomes the concessionaire, and majorly you have the royalty and tax system. What the company now do is to pay government royalty and to pay tax to the government. But for the contractual petroleum fiscal system, you have two types, which is the service contract and the production sharing contract. For the service contract, you have two types. You have the pure service contract and you have the risk service contract. For the pure service contract, the companies are seen as contractors. So you just employ them to do a certain task or activity. Probably you could get a reporting or shell, okay, produce this feed, develop this feed for us, and that's all. So the company gets paid for what they are doing. And after they are done with that service, they go. So you pay them for their service and they go. And this is what you use more in the Middle East. Yeah, this is what is done more in the Middle East, right? So companies come in and they just do their service and they are paid for those tasks. But for the risk service contract, in this sense, is that this contract allows the companies to bear all the risk. So the government is not going to bear any risk for you. And I think there's some fields in Nigeria that actually operate on risk service. So if the company come in, develop the field. If you lose, right, you're your own. You're going to bear the risk for a risk service contract. Then a production sharing contract. A production sharing contract is as once you start producing, right, you begin to share the production volume between the government and the contractor. So in the petroleum fiscal system analysis for strategic investment decision, we look at, because the government will tell you that, okay, once you start production and these are the volumes you are producing, this is a percentage that I will be getting, right? This is a percentage for me, this is a percentage for you. And as the volume keeps increasing, the percentage will be going down. I will show also typical examples of that as well too. So what we bring this here is that for us to understand the two types of petroleum fiscal system, right? Types of laws, what is in it, asset ownership, right? Royalty and tax system, why this guy varies. Risk sharing, right? Whether you're sharing risk or you're not sharing risk. Production sharing, right? You are sharing profit now. The profit you are sharing is because the government owns the license, right? Owns the resources, right? And you are now paying him that say, take, let me produce and I'll be giving you some portion for all my productions. So I could say that Nigeria uses two types of petroleum fiscal system, and where should we classify our JVs? Most of our JVs are under the concessionary petroleum fiscal system. So for production sharing contracts, I put this here because in our deep offshore, right, most of our deep offshore operations, we use the PSC for them. So by production sharing is that once I produce, which is my gross production, right? I'm going to divide my production into two parts. I have my profit oil or profit hydrocarbon, or the cost recovery hydrocarbon, or what I call the cost oil. The cost oil is what we use to recover our costs, right? It's the money we use the money that is spent to develop the field. So I take some portion out and I term it as my cost oil or cost recovery hydrocarbon. So I remove that cost oil out of it. So what will be left is my profit oil. So from the profit oil, I divide it now between the NOC's share and the contractor's share. The NOC stands for the government and the contractor, so they take it there. Then the contractor from it is going to pay taxes to the government, and at the end of the day, we get our contractor's profits on the government take at the end of the day from a PSC arrangement. So that's just this also what we are talking about. But I put this slide, next slide, to give us more explanation of what cost recovery and profit oil, what it means. So it's cost recovery, like I said, once you produce, after you've removed royalty, right, from you've given government the royalty aspect of the production, the next thing to do is to calculate your cost oil, to remove the cost oil, to deduct it from it. Then some specifies it 85% the cost oil, right? Then so that what will be left will now become the profit oil. And the profit oil that is left now, what do? You share it between the government and the contractor. So I will also show us this profit oil split. And these are the things that our economic model will honor, we account for, so that we can be able to take a strategic business decision, right? I don't know, is it clear? Or should I go ahead?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's clear. But the other one, the other contracting one that you mentioned about the risks, they bear the risks. So, but you didn't mention what's the benefit if the risks, if there is no oil, they take the risks. But what if there is production? What's their benefit? You didn't mention it.
Okay, if there is production, they produce in that sense. Yeah, for risk service contract, if there is production, they continue their business. But if there is loss, they will be the one all the entire risk per se.
Okay, so how much is their share on that, on the service, if there is production?
Okay, for that's for the risk service. For that, if there is production for risk service, like I said, they are the ones that will, they will start production, and what would they now do is to give to government the royalty and their tax, they pay tax. So that's what government is going to get. But in terms of losses, if there are losses, then they'll be the one that will bear the entire loss. But in that case, government is not bearing any burden for them. That's why it's called it's a risk service contract. But for pure service, now the government bears the burden, because it's going to pay the company for the service that is done, right? Whether there is production or not, but just come and do this, just come and carry out this activity for me, develop this field, drill the wells, right? Install these facilities, and once you are done, you go. So if there is production or not, the government bears the risk associated with it. I don't know if it's clear.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, sir.
Where do you classify marginal fields?
Okay, marginal fields, it now depends on their location, right? Their location for marginal fields. So if they are for if they are onshore, most times they're under the concessionary systems, right? But if they are in the deep offshore terrain, you can look at the production sharing contract aspect of it. So but most marginal fees, they are under the, what's it called, the concessionary fiscal system if they're in the land, right? And it now also depends on the terrain, so I mean on the country, in terms of are they doing pure service or are they risk service based. But like in Nigeria, you have them more at the concessionary fiscal system. And what the PIA does for us today is that, though in those days, before the PIA, you do have a separate arrangement for the PIA, I mean for the marginal fee. But today, the PIA, what it does is that it specifies their production capacity that wants to produce this volume and that volume, right? This is what is attainable to the government. But like I said, most of them are under the concessionary fiscal system, most especially when they are onshore terrain. But for some countries, depending on what they are operating, whether they are weak service or pure service, that will now apply to them. But like I said, in Nigeria, we have them more at the concessionary PFS, right? I don't know, is it clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Then fiscal tools. In the petroleum fiscal system, is a fiscal tools. Like when the PIA came out, the first thing I need to look at is the fiscal aspect of the act. What does it state? So in it will specify the royalty rate. It will specify the corporate income tax. It will specify the bonuses, the crypto taxes, NDDC levy, education tax, and you can see that even in this new tax reform bill, we'll see that there's an adjustment of the education tax, I think to about 5%. That's what is going for that. That will be used for aside TED fund. You also have the student loan and the likes. You have the NDDC levy that is there. You have the profit oil and gas. No, now profit oil, like I said, is a portion of oil that is left after you remove royalty oil and cost recovery oil. Then you have the cost recovery option. So these are just some of the fiscal tools that are there. And in most cases, it also specifies how this will be deducted, right? How this will be deducted. In Nigeria, we have the hydrocarbon tax that is deducted from the accessible profits and so on. But these are tools that we use, we incorporate into our economic model that allows us to now calculate investment profitability. So this is a typical example of what we've been saying. Let's say I have a 30 million barrel field, which is my reserve, right? Is to be developed with a cost of both tangible and intangible costs. Tangible costs are costs you spend on those facilities, on things you can see, right? Things you can see, like my drilling cost, my facility cost. While intangible costs are those costs you pay for them, but you don't get to see them or use them for your production. Then this is my cost, which is about $129 billion. Then my OPEX, which is my operating cost over the entire life of the field, is $110.5 million. And I'm asked now to calculate the government and contractor share if the royalty rate is 12.5% and the tax rate is 35%. Royalty is a portion, right, or a percentage of the gross production that you give to government, royalty. So when you are producing, government specifies what royalty you give to it. And it's a tool that makes a petroleum fiscal system to be front-end loaded, in the sense that at the start of production, you give government that money, right? You must give government that percentage. So whether you make profit or not, the first thing to do is to remove the royalty, right? They have a tax rate of 35%, and this is the oil price. So to be able to do this, we'll come back to our net cash flow, which involves us now calculating our gross revenue, removing our royalty rate, removing the capex and opex, removing the bonuses, the tax, and we arrive at our NCF. Like this now, this is my production. To get the gross revenue, I multiply it by the oil price. Then I get my gross revenue of $540 million. And there's an end here. So I remove my royalty. And you can see that the royalty is this. I give it to the government. My gross revenue after royalty, my gross revenue after royalty, I also calculate it, right? I get it by removing the royalty from the gross revenue. I calculate it. What is my capex? I remove it. What is my opex? I remove it from this. At the end of the day, I calculate what is left now. I calculate my what? Taxable income. That is the income that can be taxed. What is my tax? I tax it. 35% of this is this. Then at the end of the day, I calculate my NCF. My NCF will now be my gross revenue minus the royalty, minus the expenditures, minus the tax, minus what I give to government. This becomes the contractor's share, and this becomes the host government share. So there's also what we call the what's it called? The government share and contractor's share. Trying to see if I can get a pen so that I can say GT government share now, or let's say can be equal to the government share, right? Divided by the contractor's share plus what? The government share. So the total net revenue, you sum them together and say, okay, what percentage goes to the government and what percentage goes to the contractors, right? And companies do it so that they know, okay, how much is government getting and how much is contractors getting. And this is also something that they use to assess fiscal regime. They say, okay, Nigeria, if I'm to invest in Nigeria, what is the government share? What is the contractor's share? If I'm to invest in Ghana, what is the government share and what is the contractor's share? So government also tries to be very careful in the sense that they don't want to lump up their fiscal so that majority of it is going to the government, especially in today's industry. Unlike those days where companies could pay as high as over 80%, 80% of their net revenue is going to the government in those days. But with the PIA, you could get like 50%, 60% going to the government in terms of your government share, which makes it more appealing for investment. So petroleum fiscal system we have in Nigeria, and like I said, we have the 1993 PSC arrangement, and what we look at for when we want to do our business analysis is that we look at, okay, what are the fiscal arrangements? The signature production bonuses are negotiable. Production bonus is that when you produce to a certain level, when you are at a certain level of production, government can say, give me this portion, right? You begin to pay government some certain portion. So the more you produce, the higher the production bonus. Why the signature bonus is a one-time fee you give to government when you get a license. So you give government that money as form of signature bonus. That's why if you look at in 2020, that's former DPR, then they brought out some the marginal feed bid round as at then, and you could see that the signature rate was also specified. And I think back then the government was to make about over 100 and something billion naira just from the signature bonus, if I'm correct. I'm just trying to refer back to what happened in 2020. Then depreciation is there to specify that a straight line depreciation and tangible development. So one of the things that is done is that when it comes to depreciation, and the idea here is that it's not like your asset is depreciating or your facilities are depreciating. No, depreciation is a method that company use to get back their capital. So if I spend $50 million to develop a field, or let's say $300 million to develop a field, and in normal economics, I need to recover that money first before I start paying tax to the government. But what the fiscal system does is that government wants to start any money early from investment. Now say, okay, do not deduct the money that on that year you spent, the entire money on the year the following year. But what do? Break these costs into 5 years, so that every year you will be like I said, if I spend $300 million every year, I'll be removing how much? $60 million from my gross production as part of my depreciation method. So that's what we do when it comes to depreciation, straight line depreciation. And this is a royalty rate as specified there. Onshore terrain in 1993 PSC is about 20%, right? If you go offshore now, depending on the depth, if you drill above 1,000 meters, you no longer pay royalties, right? Yeah, you no longer pay royalties. The government has given a bit of flexibility to companies that, especially the big guys, for them to decide for them to want to convert their licenses to the PIA, right? That they can do it. But for marginal feed, I think less than 2 years was given for them to ensure that they convert their license to a petroleum mining license. But the idea here is that it's specified that these are the royalty rates that the companies are to pay, right? Once they start production. The education tax is 2% on accessible profits. Then we still have the PPT, the petroleum profit tax, that must be calculated, right? Then you have the cost recovery option, 100%, and there is ring fencing. 100% cost recovery option. This means that before the company will start paying tax, they must have recovered all their costs. And you know that in a PSC arrangement, which is done in the deep offshore region, the cost is usually very much, right? So this sends a wrong, it does not allow government to get money early from oil and gas investment. Though this was passed then because of the price of oil, so it was very low. So to who investors to invest in Nigeria, government had to make these fiscals. Though these fiscals ought to have been reviewed several years, but we were not getting any positive feedback until the passage of the deep offshore and inland basin production sharing contract. This is a profit oil split. I know I talked about profit oil split, right? Now, the oil that is left as profit oil will now be splitted between the contractor and the what? And the host government. So when you produce less than 250 million barrels of oil equivalent, the contractor's profit share becomes 80%. And as you increase it, your production it begins to go down. So your economic model will usually account for all of this. We automate ourselves to capture all of that. So in 2019, I guess we all know what happened in the UK, and kudos to late Abba Kyari. So one of the achievements that it does as chief of staff to President Muhammadu Buhari was to see that we were able to pass this the deep offshore and inland basin production sharing contract amendment. And it's because of the PSC, the 1993 PSC, it has reduced royalties and tax rates. It does not allow government to get money early from oil and gas investment because of the fact that above a water depth of 1,000 meters, the companies pay zero royalty. And above, they have cost recovery options. That means that before they recover their costs, government will not get any money from it, right? Because they're not starting making profits. So they will not be giving government any money until they get their costs. And even though they get back their costs, they will only be giving government either tax or on the profit oil. So it was not a good tool for the government as at then. So it has to be changed here and there. And these are the fiscals that we had as at then. The new royalty rate was specified, the revisions of the royalty rate. That's when you begin to see that the royalty rates for the deep offshore and inland basin PSC arrangement was dynamic. When we say it is dynamic, it means that once oil price is changing, right, you can see that the rate is changing between $20 or $60 per barrel. It's about 2.5%, and above $150 per barrel is about 10%. So these are the things we pay attention to for strategic business decision, because we pick this now, we put it in our economic model to give us value, right? So from our own analysis that we did as a day, there was, I think there's a paper which I will share as a case study. I worked with Professor Umi Ledare, a veteran in petroleum economics, and some of our findings was that we look at what government actually want, because government said that they want to make more money from oil and gas investment, which is good, which is fine. But from our analysis, we found out that government will get more money from deep offshore region. They will make more money. But for the onshore region, the fiscals for the onshore region, it will make government to get less money compared to the 1993 PSC. And some of the things that we had in mind is that government would be that wants to also encourage domestic, that's the indigenous oil and gas companies, so that it does not overburden them with much fiscals, right, as regards to this. So those are some of the thoughts that we had in mind, that government intention of actually getting much money from this particular deep offshore and inland basin PSA arrangement may not be fully achieved, because more is coming from here and less is coming from here. So they're kind of in a balance, right? But at the same time, we also say that it could be that the policymakers as are there want to also boost encourage indigenous players in the oil and gas sector. So we did that then. We only published that of the the deep offshore region. Yeah, I had a student that worked on that of the inland basin and frontier as a then. So, but that work has not yet been in the public space. But these were our findings as at 2020, right? During COVID, yeah. In 2021, we did the analysis as at then. So, okay, talked about, let me just move straight to the Petroleum Industry Act so that we'll be wrapping up soon. So it's, like I said, it's something that most of us are already used to, that the PIA is is provided for as an act, right, to see that there is more efficiency in the oil and gas sector. We have apt regulatory framework, institutions and authorities. So, so it was established to, to revamp the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, to give more confidence to investors. And it has four sections, right? The governance section, the fiscal element, the host community, and the administrative section. And you also have the miscellaneous section, which is the fifth one, right? Then, what do we do when it comes to petroleum fiscal system analysis. We look at this, each of the sections. There's the administrative section. We look at it and we specify the bidding process, government participation, concept of significant gas recovery, domestic crude and gas obligations. You have the governance aspect. It defines the ministerial powers, right? Who are the policy makers, right? Which is the minister, who are the regulators, and now we have the commission and the authority, right? Which are the regulators. The commission is for the upstream sector, while the authority, right, is for the midstream and the downstream sector. Then you have NNPC Limited and voluntary migration to JVs, and even voluntary migrations to the PIA as well. They have the host community aspect, right? That is funded through 3% of the annual OPEX. The funny thing is that this 3% now, you have to account it in your economic model. So you have the host community fund, right? Which is being given, which is you need to account for in your economy. So fiscal system analysis will bring out all of these to see that. So what are the fiscal framework in terms of royalty? You have the different royalty rates that are sensitive to, so royalty is sensitive to production. So the higher I produce, the more I pay, and the least I produce, the less I what? The less I pay, right? So it's also sensitive to, this is sensitive to terrain also too. Onshore, deep offshore, you can see the royalty rate, right? And it's also sensitive to oil price. When oil price is below $50 per barrel, I don't pay any royalty. At the end of the day, I will calculate my royalty based on production and my royalty based on what? Based on terrain. And my royalty based on, so the royalty based on terrain and production, they are intertwined. They go together. Then I have my royalty based on price. Now, the higher the oil price, what happens? I'm going to pay more royalties. And you can see here that there's this you have to intersect to determine the royalty rate. As the oil price goes up, you calculate the royalty rate for it. So in our economic session, we usually calculate for that to account for these stuffs here. But above a oil price of $150 per barrel, you don't pay any royalty to the government. So this is the production allowance, which is specified in the PIA, that allows companies to get some money back in terms of tax incentives, right? So I put it in my model so that per barrel of oil I sell or I produce, the companies get back $8 from what is supposed to give to the government, right? So they get it back. Though this is conditional, right? Depending on the production and depending on production and oil price. Yeah, so it depends on what you're going to accept. But the idea here is that production allowance is there as an incentive to allow companies to get some money back, right, from their investments. So just of recent, the government gave an executive order for what we call cost efficiency incentive, which is an executive order, and this is how you calculate it, right? And what does the government want to do? Like I said initially, is that the cost of production in Nigeria is very high. Some fields can get even up to like $40 per barrel, some $33 per barrel. It's very, very high. So government wants companies to reduce their OPEX, right? Wants companies to reduce their OPEX. And this is the way it is being calculated, such that government can get maximum of 20% tax incentive from this. All right. So when you do it, you're able to reduce your cost. Instead of giving government 100% of your tax, you give them only 80%. That's also upon approval when you submit to the commission, right? But it's on an annual basis. you can get that from companies. So we are also saying that aside that government can also look at it that we also feel that if my cost of production is reduced, that means I'll be paying more taxes, right, to the government, and government will just only get a portion of it, and a portion of it would not be used for the these cost efficiency incentives. So we may also say that we can also look at that fund that is going back to them as well, and how it works to see how effective it's going to be. But it is something that we're also looking at for, and we hope to publish our findings and our outputs from it. So also to add last year too, the government also passed on an executive order, right, to woo investors by reducing the tax incentives, by giving the tax incentives, and also reducing the tax rates, and for companies to be able to invest. And so, like I said, petroleum fiscal analysis is that we look at those things to see, okay, what is the need for us as a company? And for government, what is the need there to woo investors to invest in the country? So these are pertinent issues about the PIA has been flogged over and over again. Then the marginal feed operators, they're also saying that we need something for ourselves, right? Then this is a case study, like I said, for the deep offshore and inland basin production sharing amendments, contract amendments in Nigeria that we did that was passed in 2019, and the work was done by myself and Professor Ledari, and we had Professor Petrus, and even our section chair, Professor Keshaku, was part of it, and Engineer Emeka Ilobunam was also part of the work. And it was quite interesting. We analyzed that act, right? And what we did was to employ our net cash flow equation, as you can see here, right, to calculate our NCF, right? So we look at the royalty rates, the capex and opex, we move them, the profit oil and gas. This profit oil and gas only comes when it comes to PS, right? It's different from you don't use it when you're operating in a consistent petroleum fiscal system. So what are the fiscals specified in this DOIB PSCA? You find out that for 1993, these are the fiscals there. Then in this, these are the fiscals that are there. For 1993, the royalty rates are, we'll say it is fixed. It is regressive because it is fixed. But for the deep offshore inland PSC amendment, it's dynamic. So it is progressive, right? It is progressive. And some of the things we're also looking out for is that we're trying to bring out more measures of actually measuring the progressivity of a petroleum fiscal system, that aside the fact that it honors prior price and production, but how do we value the progressivity of a petroleum fiscal system? So that has been something that I've been thinking about over the years, and still trying to get students that can actually help us rack that concept up. But I feel that you can actually, that there should be measures that will allow us to assess the progressivity of a petroleum fiscal system. Not just saying, okay, it's dynamic, it's flexible, but how do we measure it, right? How do we measure the progressivity of it? I know you can kind of measure progressivity when you compare to when it's static and when it is dynamic. But we need to come up with those like an indicator that can give us that value. Yes, can give us that value. So these are the fiscals that we used to build a model. Then these are the equations that we used as well. The NPV, the internal rate of return, the unit technical cost, the government take the front-end loading index, FLI. FLI gives you the idea of whether a petroleum fiscal system is loaded. If it is front-end loaded, it means that the government is getting money early from the investment, all right? Well, if it is, the value is low, it means that the government is not getting much more money very early from the investment. So it's a tool we use to analyze a petroleum fiscal system. And these are our feed data that we used to assess it. And these are just the results that was obtained. And if you look at, so what we also do is we compare the fiscals, right? Assuming I invest in the 1993 PSC, these are the revenues that you will get. What if I invest in the 2019 Deep Offshore Inland Basin PSC amendment, right? These are the fiscals I'm going to. Now, if you look at the comparison here between these two, you will find out that in terms of NPV, the host government will get more, right, from the investment compared to that of the 1993 PS, right? And so if you look at the discounted and undiscounted take the amendment, you find out that government will get like 72.64%. Then the contractor will get about 27.37%. When you compare it to the 1993 PSC, it's much more higher. Like I said, which is government objective of getting more money from the deep offshore region. So these are the results we get based on our own analysis. You look at the FLI, you can see that for this is more front-end loaded, right? Then this is less front-end loaded. Because now, at the early start of the investment, contractors are beginning to pay royalty very early, right? And government is also getting money early from the investment in terms of your royalty payments. The government is getting more very, very early. So these are just the fiscals for that we use. So these are our results. So these are also advances in petroleum economics, or based on also petroleum economics, inputs in that sense, and that we've had, and there are a whole lot of others. I just put this here, and so you have the use of data development analysis, which was used to rank the efficiencies of A and P firm, and one of the council chair, Dr. Aminata Madani, she actually used, in part of our work, she used this tool to assess the efficiency for refineries, right? Like I recall. Yeah, I also have Dr. Idowu Adekunle that used this tool to assess the efficiency of oil and gas companies in Nigeria in his PhD work at the African University of Science and Technology. So it's quite an advanced, right? Advanced technique that to assess companies' efficiencies using DEA, data and development and analysis. You have the machine learning and programming tools that are used now for smart solutions, for forecasting production. And we're also thinking of how to employ machine learning, right, for economic analysis, right? But yeah, I know we can always do that when we have a lot of data. It's something that I think the commission can do, since they have access to most investment data, so that or they just need to do more is that when assessing FDP of companies, it's just to put in their cost into the model, and they're able to get their economics. Though another challenge will also be that companies have their ways, different ways they calculate and account for their costs, because some fiscal systems give some form of flexibility. But I know that if we model different scenarios for each company, so be able to get a model, right, that we can use for prediction of likely investment profitability. Then you have the modified unit technical cost model. The one in red are the works that we've done in terms of advancement, and so something that I also teach per se, but for this class it's just like a basic stuff. Though I know I was a bit fast, and some of the things also need some form of breakdown. But in an advanced class, we also take some of these concepts so that we allow people not just to accept or to incorporate some of this, but we also need to think, right? To think and see how better can we make our industry, right? What tools that we can bring in. That's why we brought in the delayed royalty framework, the hybrid petroleum fiscal system. We're able to combine two fiscal regime and economic model. The modified, our most recent work is a modified depreciation model. So these are new thoughts that we've brought in. Sometimes I'll be home and I'll see that someone has cited my work, that I've done, and there are a lot of stuff that we can really do. So this should be the last slide, right? So in all, we've looked at petroleum fiscal system analysis and for strategic investment decision making. And for investment decision, what company looks at more is the profitability. That's why our emphasis was on the fiscal tools, right? The fiscal tools in the petroleum fiscal system. And there we're able to see that those tools allows us to assess profitability of an investment. And we went for that to do a case study, right? And we saw that government always have an objective in mind. Objective to woo investors, objective to develop hydrocarbon resources, objective for economic prosperity, and so on and so forth. And we saw that the government objective of doing it for the deep offshore region was achieved, right? And it was achieved, and it was right. But I know with the PIA has a less government take compared to the deep offshore and the land basin PSC arrangement. So I will stop here for today, and I don't know if there are questions or comments. So it's all welcome. So thank you once again for joining. Thank you for listening. The floor is open for comments or questions.
Thank you so much for that very detailed lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to ask your questions. Of course, like the speaker had mentioned, that he's given. Confirm you can hear me, please.
Yes.
Okay, like the speaker has mentioned, that he's giving us a little insight into this topic. Of course, you still have the opportunity to join his advanced class, which would give detailed explanation on the different subtopics on petroleum fiscal systems, and of course, the common types of fiscal systems we have in Nigeria. Thank you so much for showing us all of your case studies and examples. We are really grateful to you, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for questions. Like we had said, if you want to ask a question, raise your hands. That's number one. Or you drop a chat if you are not in a place where you can speak. We'll give the opportunity for about 5 questions. And once we are done with the 5 questions, we wrap up this master class. We start with Okay Nwankwo, our Assistant Diversity and Inclusion Chair for SP Abuja section. Okay, Nwankwo, please, can you unmute your mic and ask a question?
Okay, thank you very much, Ofonono. Thank you, the presenter, for a very detailed presentation on these petroleum physicals. But I have a few questions and maybe a few comments I wish to contribute. So the first one is, I think the entire concept of the PIA was to clearly separate the industry into upstream, midstream, and downstream.
Yeah.
So is it safe for me to say that this is just upstream petroleum physical system that is being discussed and not necessarily midstream and downstream? Because I think we need to make that specification or delineation just for further understanding. And I also love us to, as part of your research, to also do like a detailed analysis of the petroleum physicals in the midstream, vis-a-vis the tariff system and some of the other things that the PIA has introduced. I think that's my first comment. So my second comment again is in respect to the calculation of royalties, which you clearly mentioned. I think if you go to Schedule 7 of the PIA, Section 7 to be precise, on the calculation of royalties, I think there is an impact the midstream has on the calculation of royalties, and I don't think I found it in this presentation, which is that we are also supposed to deduct your processing cost. You're also supposed to deduct your transportation cost from the upstream to the export terminal or the gas processing facility, as the case may be, as determined by authority. I think that is also supposed to be part of the incentives that are supposed to be factored in. And honestly, I don't think that the industry has fully migrated to that process whereby operators are allowed to deduct the processing cost for the gas, as the case may be, and the transportation cost of either the crude oil or the natural gas from the upstream to the midstream in the calculation of royalty. My third question, I don't know how much question I have. I heard you talk about voluntary migration to the PIA. I honestly did not understand that statement. So I think if you can also explain that statement to me, I really appreciate it. And then the last but not the least, so that I also give other people opportunities, I also want, from your expertise, can you also explain to us or to me in particular, the concept of transfer pricing, right? For instance, the PIA mandates that transfer of hydrocarbon from upstream to the midstream and then from the midstream to the downstream is actually carried out without sales. No, I mean from the upstream to the midstream is carried out without sales. If you look at the definition of disposal in the PIA, it says transfer hydrocarbon produced to another entity and to facilities for midstream operations without sales. And I think that has been a source of a little bit of confusion. And some of people have asked about, said it's all related to the concept of transfer pricing. So if it's something you can also throw light on, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Do we still have more questions? Thank you for that. I will respond.
So do we still have more questions? Please, if you have your questions, kindly. Okay, Professor Kafayas, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, facilitator, for the detailed presentation. I have a first question, which will lead to a second one. And the first one is, which agency or who's responsible for developing the petroleum fiscal policy of a country? And in our case, Nigeria. And then I'll now link it to the objectives of the fiscal policy. And I'll now be at which one of it is satisfying domestic demand. How is it integrated into the economic model of that policy? And where does the gap come? Because we have scarcity here and there. Where is that gap? Is my question understood?
Yeah, come again with the second one.
Okay. You got the first one, that who is responsible for the fiscal petroleum fiscal policy, right? So
Yes.
if all stakeholders are involved, where does scarcity issues come up? Because one of the objectives of the fiscal policy is to satisfy domestic demand of petroleum products.
Okay.
Yeah, so where is that gap? Because there's a policy, so there shouldn't be issues with the domestic demand.
Okay, thank you.
Then I said, how is
I've
that
taken
also incorporated into the economic model?
Okay, thank you.
Is it clear?
Yes, yes, I'm taking note of the
Thank you.
questions.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, you have one hand up. Dr. Lainka.
Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon. Thank you, the moderator and the presenter, for that job well done. Okay, I have two questions. Number one is I want to know the difference between, if there is any, sole risk and this tax and royalty regime. Sole risk and tax and royalty regime. That's number one question. Then number two is from my understanding, I know that the PSC was first developed in Indonesia, I think maybe 1960 or thereabouts. So maybe as a kind of a modification to the concessionary regime. So I don't know if the presenter and his team, if they have done any work to know whether the concessionary regime or production sharing contracts, which is under contractual arrangement, which one is better, and which one favors the host government better, and which one favors the contractor, and why the kind of that, have you ever been having anything like a tax and royalty in Nigeria? I don't know if you get my questions. Do you get my questions? Hello?
I think you lost him. We've lost his network. And he would try joining shortly. Ogarume, you unmute your mic, please.
Yeah, I'm back. I think I lost Dr. Lainka when I was asking something about the difference in so I didn't get that the question he asked.
Okay, should I go ahead to repeat the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the question is, I said, is there any difference between sole risk and then tax and royalty, which is under concessionary arrangements? That's the first question. Then the second one is that I know that PSC, production sharing contract, is came from Indonesia in maybe 1960 or thereabouts, as a result of trying to modify the existing one. So I now want to know if you and your team, you have done any research in knowing which one of these, either concessionary arrangements or any of these contractual arrangements, which one favors the host government most, and which of these arrangements favors the contractor, the investors most.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I believe that's all the questions, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me, I was able to take note of them. Let me respond to the questions. So let me start with the last question, the difference between sole risk and concessionary petroleum fiscal system. Like I explained earlier on for the PFS, right? That's the sole risk. That's also the pure service petroleum fiscal system. That in that case, for that, the resources belongs to the government, right? Government still owns the resources, but companies now are coming and say, okay, that's companies that's the risk service are coming that, okay, I want to develop this asset. So if you're developing the assets, the government does not bear any risk per se, but the companies bears the risk in that sense. But ownership of the resources rely more on the ownership of the resources for the sole risk is for the government, but the company is coming to develop it right at its own risk. So the government is also putting any money to bear in that case. But for the concessionary, the government owns the resource is owned by the concessionaire, right? The resource is owned by the concessionaire, and government also go into JVs, and that also allows them to bear some costs when it comes to the investment itself. So that's the difference between that. Then you're also asking a question on, let me see again, that which of them will be more attractive for investment? It also depends on the tools or mechanisms that the government have put in place. Depends on the royalty rates specified, depends on the hydrocarbon tax specified. It also depends on the tax or what the government has put in place. So I can't say that so risk or the concessionary or the PSC, as the case may be, that this is the best or something, but it now depends on what is government going to be taking, what is the government share of the whole pie in that sense. So with that, you'll be able to get, for a country that is doing that, you'll be able to assess which of them will be better for them. Like, for example, now if you are dealing with PSC, the cost of investment for the PSCs are different from that of the onshore environment, right? It's different from that of the onshore environment. So the risk that is also involved is also different as well. Too. So these are the things that companies look out for and take decisions on. Then someone asks on the who is responsible for policy development. And based on the PIA, the ministry, as the Minister of Petroleum Resources, is responsible for such for policy formulation. That has to do with if you check the governance aspect of the PIA, we'll see it there. Though before the PIA, we saw that there was a bit of power play, right? And there was a bit of power play that happened before the PIA was passed, but the minister is solely involved for the formulation of policies in Nigeria. So the minister is involved for that. Then for the issues of scarcity or domestic supply, yeah, the PIA makes provisions for that as well, and even domestic supply obligations for that to see that we have a sufficient supply of the petroleum products or even petroleum itself. But you know that in reality, sometimes it's politics and interest will also come in, like what Dangote is also facing at the moment. We saw the power play that is there, but pressing us also on the PIA to see where, how that can, how you can get more domestic supply obligations. So these are also in the books to address that. And I know some of the issues, the reasons why that may come. Before now, you observe that there's usually high fuel scarcity, right? And in Abuja, in Lagos, in Warri, and we also tend to now question that the law is not meant to see that all of this are avoided. The laws are meant to see that they're avoided, but reality comes in and we see some form of inefficiencies in that regard. Then the first speaker asks for processing costs to be deducted. Like I said, even that of the transfer pricing as well. Like most of these things are embedded in the PIA, and there are a whole lot of stuff that I would really love to talk about, but time may not like this kind of course. It's a semester. We take them for 2 semesters, right? So that we'll sit down and discuss most of these things that are there. But the whole idea here is that for petroleum fiscal system analysis, we look at the laws. And like you said, yes, most of the fiscal that I brought was more from the upstream sector. But I made mention that the value chain, I talk about the value chains of the midstream and the downstream sector. I made mention that them they also have their fiscals, right? They have their fiscals, but the midstream and downstream sector is more of a tax, it's a tax system. And aside tax, the next thing you do is maybe levies or levies, obligations, and crypto taxes. But it's not like what you have in the upstream sector. So voluntary migration to the PIA. Yes, like I said, most of these things are embedded there. So when you look at the PIA, it gives companies that opportunity that they can actually change their licenses, right, from OML to PPL per se. But this applies to more of the major players. But marginal field operators, they have that leverage, right, to they have their condition within 18 months, right, of the passage of the PIA to see that they're able to change their licenses from OML to PIA. So I think these are my response to the question. Like I said, it's just the basic sessions. Yeah, it's also open. Thank you.
I think Okechukwu still has a follow-up question, and that will be the last question for today. Okay, Okechukwu, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And I wish to thank the moderator for his responses. But just like you said, I just wanted to ask a few questions based on what was just said or reacted to. So the first one is, if NMPC is no longer under government, I mean, like a limited liability company, should we still be referring to some of those concessionaires as government take? Since NMPC technically is a limited liability company. That's my first question as a follow-up. And then the other one I wanted to say, just if you permit me, in addition to the question Madam Kafayat asked with respect to domestic obligation, I think the entire concept of the PIA, which is different from the Petroleum Act, was that producers were no longer allowed to export whatever is produced unless they get a wholesale supply license, which is supposed to be in the midstream. So it's just to highlight that point. But whether that is currently being practiced, I don't think so. So I think that was one of the ways the PIA wanted to ensure that there is that energy security. Because if you compare the Petroleum Act of 1969 to the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021, under the Petroleum Act of 1969, producers has the powers to both produce and export. But under the Petroleum Industry Act of 1916 of 2021, producers are just meant to produce and then deliver to midstream for us to balance domestic obligations prior to export. So I just wanted to add this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much. I know you're also a policy expert Yeah, thanks for your comments as well. Like the question which you also asked in terms of, because now NNPC is a limited liability, is a company. So when we build models like this, what I just put as GT, there's it's quite generic. So you also account for what goes to NNPC, and you account for what goes to the contractors, especially in terms of for their JV, right? So you look at that, you bring that into stuffs, and you also separate other takes, right? In terms of royalties and in terms of tax, right? So in a more complex model, we'll look at that. What goes to the EC, then what also goes to the contractors, and what you give as royalties, and what also goes to FIOS in that sense, right? In a more complex model, but I just lump it up as GT and City, but in a more realistic sense. Yeah, you break it down and you look at even among the contractors too. You also have other you also have more than one companies, right? That has shares in that in terms of ownership. So you look at what goes to each company's model. That's why the software that we are developing at the moment, it's accounts for all those stuff. So it's like more or less like an end-to-end petroleum economics software. So that if you are in JVs, it's accounts for that. If the company even take loan to finance the venture, it also accounts for that. Just hoping that we have that software running soonest in the country so that we'll see what our indigenous capability have been able to produce. So thanks, the Dr. or Engineer Okay, for your comments and contribution and the questions. Thank you.
Thank you
Okay,
so
thank you.
much. Thank you so much. Please, you can give a virtual applause to our phenomenal facilitator, who is a membership chair, of course, Engineer Rome Ogolo. Thank you so much, sir. Please drop your virtual applauses. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are grateful for your commitment to sharing technical knowledge to SPE members. Of course, this is one of the key deliverables where we serve our members with updated technical information. Thank you so much, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up the event. Of course, if you have not joined SPE, if you're not a member of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, we are saying, please, it's time for you to be part of SPE Abuja. Of course, we have several professional members benefits. We have several student member benefits. Should you want to renew your membership, the new membership fee is 86,500 and the renewal fee is 69,500. The speaker today is our membership chair, so you can do well to call him on the number you see on the screen, and he would always be at your service to assist you with your membership inquiries. For those that want to make payments, you can also do a screenshot of this, make payments to the SPA Abuja bank account, a GT bank account, send the proof of payment to Engineer Ogenerume on WhatsApp, and he would fast track your renewal processes. We also advise that you, from time to time, visit all of our social media platforms for updated information about the section and, of course, about SPE Nigeria Council. Our email, we respond to emails at 24-hour basis, spabuja@gmail.com. Our YouTube has this event streamed, and of course, all of our past technical sessions streamed on it. So you can always go and refresh your memory. SPE Abuja section on Facebook, SPE Abuja 199 on LinkedIn, SPE Abuja 199 on Instagram. We also like to announce that we have a monthly technical meeting themed integrating hydrogen production into Nigeria's oil and gas sector, a pathway to energy transition. We're pleased to have the CEO of Ample Plus VG Energy VG, Dr. Mohammed Babashehu, speak to us on the 24th of June 2025 by 5 p.m. please visit the link you see on your screen, register, or visit our social media on LinkedIn and get the link and of course register. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to also announce that our biggest flagship program for the year, which is themed NICE 2025, the Nigerian Annual International Conference and Exhibition, comes up from the 4th to 6th of August 2025. I know we are so excited about this. We have so many student members on the call who also want to volunteer for this event. So yes, it is a high-level industry summit where we enhance your knowledge with over 150 technical papers. Ensure you try and register before the 30th of June. On the 30th of June, early bird registration would be over. And then we go to the normal rate, which will be more expensive than the early bird. Again, at the on-site in the conference, it is going to be more expensive than the normal rate. So please, we advise all SP Abuja members, please rush to the link today and register. Today is 21st, probably about 9 days, and we are done with June, and this is over. Ladies and gentlemen, wrap up this event by taking a closing remark. Of course, to take a closing remark will be no other than our Student Affairs Chair, Aisha Tukodigi. We'd like to hear from you, ma'am. Please take the closing remark. Aisha.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon,
Ma. I can see Madam Amina is on the call. Good afternoon, Ma. Madam Kafayat as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Ogolo, for this insightful session. I hope we all enjoyed it and benefited as I did. Thank you very, very much. And have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, as we do in SP Abuja section, kindly on your video cameras, let's do a screenshot and see your fine faces. Please turn on your video cameras wherever you're joining from. And when I say SP Abuja, you respond with culture of excellence. SP Abuja, you respond with culture of excellence. Thank you, Engineer Rume. I can see all of the amazing, phenomenal chats on the group chats where people enjoyed your amazing lecture. Thank you, Prof. Kafayat. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, Enos. Thank you, Oluwafumi. Thank you, Williams. Thank you, Ogbo. Thank you, Enamona. Thank you, Mohammed Manu. Thank you, Theophilus. Thank you for all of those that are Tony. Thank you, Engineer Minad and Madami. We see your beautiful face all the way from the United Kingdom. Thank you. Please turn your video camera. Thank you, Ijoma Oshilike. I like your beautiful smile. Thank you, Morgan Ufoma, for turning your video cameras. Thank you, Lucy Mfon. Thank you, Oyodele Daniel. Thank you. Amazing, Abdul Fattah. Thank you. So when I say SP Abuja, all you need to do is to respond with culture of excellence. This is because this section is an award-winning section, having produced the first council chairman in SPE Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, SP Abuja, with your thumbs up, respond with culture of excellence. SP Abuja.
Culture of excellence.
I like that. Only one person responded. What's happening? Please unmute your mic. Let's do it with energy. Madam Kafayas, I'd like to hear your voice too. Ogarume, I'd like to hear your voice too. SPE Abuja.
Culture of
excellence.
Amazing. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We come to the very end of this. Anticipate the very next session we'll have, and we hope to see you on the call. Bye for now. 5 minutes for networking.